Hey, what's up, you guys? This is Dr. Mike, and today I wanted to share with you my favorite lesson that I give to all new clients, especially during my lectures or even one-on-one. Once you get this insight, it can really transform the way that you see health, but ultimately why I tell my clients is to make sure that we're speaking on the same page, that we're understanding each other. And this, what I'm about to share with you is a great exercise to learn what functional medicine is all about, what holistic healthcare approaches is all about, and why it's different than what you might be currently doing using an allopathic medical approach. So rather than explaining it, let me jump right in, show you my screen here, and let's do the exercise. So you should see my screen right now. I apologize, my face is covering a lot of the picture, but what you're looking at is a wilted plant. And the question for this exercise is this: what does the plant need to be optimally healthy? Now, I've asked thousands of people over the last few years this question, and almost everybody can give me the general answers of what this plant would need to be optimally healthy, right? So most people will yell out water. They'll yell out sunlight. They'll yell out, it's got to get good nutrition, good soil. What else? How about no bugs eating it? How about no toxins, right? We can't just pour a bunch of motor oil in there and expect that the plant's going to be super healthy. We can't have worms eating it and expect that it's going to be super healthy. So, okay, good. Nothing kind of destroying the plant or hurting the plant. And then air, right? Oxygen, gas exchange, CO2, this type of stuff. So again, 99% of people can answer this, but having asked this question to so many people, you want to know the answer I've never gotten? I have never had someone go, you know what, Dr. Mike, that plant looks sick. I wonder what medication it needs. I'm going to let that soak in for a little bit, because hopefully you know where I'm going with this. Not one person has said, I wonder what medication it is. Yet 99+% of people who I've asked that question to could give me most of those answers right up front with just a little bit of thought, right? Oops, sorry. So what goes on in our culture with our current healthcare, right? It's one thing to know that about plants, but another thing, as soon as we start looking at our own health, oftentimes it's kind of like common sense and our own thought processes go out the window. You see, whether it's culture, whether it's pharmaceutical companies, marketing, messaging, whatever it is, we've all been kind of trained to think like this. Number one is, what's my condition? What's my diagnosis? Why do I say that? Because so many people I've talked to go straight to WebMD, type in their symptoms, or go to Google, type in their symptoms, and they try and come up with the diagnosis or the name of the condition that they're dealing with. Because as soon as you get that, the second thought is, what medication do I need? It's like, okay, I know my diagnosis. Okay, what do I need to take? And that's kind of how we think about it, completely skipping over what we just did with the plant. And ultimately, what is that? Asking, well, what does this plant need to be healthy? Why, or another way of putting it, why is the plant wilted? You see, that's the magic question. When you ask why, it'll then have us naturally investigate, well, what does the plant need and what might it be missing, right? And we just don't do that in our current health. We go straight to, what do I need to take? I'm busy. I need to get back to my life. And so we pop it, and as soon as the symptom, we pop whatever the pill is, and as soon as symptom is resolved, we get right back to what we're doing. Now, most of us understand at this point, that's a kind of poor strategy of just treating symptoms, because we're seeing all these chronic illnesses just go through the roof, and they get worse and worse with time. At least that's how we see it for most people. So I want to talk now that you kind of get that point, is some insights and lessons we can pull from that. These are some of the most important lessons that are kind of between the lines that might sound obvious when I spell it out to you, but a lot of times we're not even thinking about, okay? Because we're so trained to think condition, what medication, condition, what medication. So once we start kind of digging into this analogy, into this lesson, we are going to walk away with a few insights. Number one, I'm not a botanist, and most of the people I ask this question to, or at least the vast, vast majority, are not plant experts either. But yet we all came up with some of the main staple basics of plant health. So applying this to your own health, I want to remind people to use some common sense, because oftentimes we defer to authority. I've seen this way too often. Oh, we can't quite talk about that. I'm going to leave that up to the scientists and researchers and this type of stuff. Oh, I can't talk about health and COVID. It's a new coronavirus, and we'll let the researchers talk about that. Well, can't you talk about your health, right? I'm not asking you to be an expert in virus. I'm asking you to just come back to and using this principle. Well, what does my body need to be as healthy as possible? And in order to do that, you don't have to be an expert. And for a lot of you during the whole shutdown last year, that was the biggest pet peeve for those who understand health. Why are they talking about fear, staying away, and social distancing? Why are we not talking and educating more people on how to be vibrantly healthy? And then when you're vibrantly healthy, guess what? It's more likely you're part of the 99+% that doesn't have much to worry about. So, with that being said, coming back to this, what's another thing? The pillars of health, generally speaking, cannot be replaced and they cannot be ignored. So what does that mean? There's no medication out there that replaces the need for the plant having water, right? You can't replace water with oil. You can't replace water with a medication. You can't replace sunlight for, who knows, some other synthetic chemical, right? So generally speaking, the pillars, they cannot be replaced and they cannot be ignored. Something to think about. Third one, holistic. So holistic, if you don't know what that is an understanding that our body is an entire system. It's all working in harmony to keep us in balance and to keep us healthy. And unlike cars, once you affect one area of your body, it affects the whole. It's not like a car where you can do transmission work and that has nothing to do with wheel alignment, right? So what I mean by all or suffer is this. Let's go back to that plant, and you give it perfect amount of sunlight, perfect water, perfect air, perfect soil. But like I mentioned before, let's say you never handled the toxins. Someone dumped a whole thing of motor oil in the soil, right? All these other things are perfect, but that plant won't possibly be as healthy as it could be as long as that motor oil is in there, right? So that's a very extreme example just to get the point across. But this is what goes on when I see clients come in. Is they're either, you know what, I'm so focused on my diet and nutrition. And when I review that with them, they're 90% great with how they're eating from a nutritional standpoint. But when I look at the other pillars of their health, they're all suffering. And then they're confused, wondering why they're dealing with health issues. So hopefully this story could give you an example, or this insight can give you an example of sometimes when we're not looking at the whole picture and we're so focused in on one thing, we kind of miss requirements. We miss the non-negotiable stuff. And that's what we're talking about with pillars of health. Okay? Next one. Super important. I really want to hit this home because everyone's on this science kick right now where nobody actually reads the science. They just say, oh, the science is settled. And that's not quite how science works, but let me explain this from my perspective. It does not matter how much science is ever done, how many experiments are ever conducted. It does not matter what we do from a scientific method approach. That's going to change the fact that that plant needs water, right? You're never going to magically come across some new study that finds, guess what? The plant actually doesn't need water. No. What we will do, however, is science can help us optimize. So we know from a foundational approach, science or no science, we know the plant needs water. Humans have known this way before scientific method was ever developed, that a life needs water, right? Now, where science comes in is it can help us get better at these things. So what's the best type of water for the plant? How much water should the plant get? We could do experiments on that and answer those questions and get good insights. How frequently should we water it to have the best outcome? What's the pH of the water that we should be giving it? See, you can use science to answer all those questions and optimize, but on some level, the foundational pillars need to be checked off on some level. And that's how I coach people, is once I educate you on the pillars of human health, we want to start by just making sure that the pillars on some level are being addressed, and then we can use all the tips, tricks, strategies, and everything out there to get better. This is what I mean, like at the in my video, where I feel I can be the best value for the YouTube space, rather than recreating more tips and tricks and herbs and supplement protocols for symptoms and all this stuff. And don't get me wrong, there's a time and place where that's really helpful. Where I think I can be the most value is by giving some of these insights and health common sense, I guess you can say, because then you're going to understand why all these tips and tricks work. You're going to understand why does someone go on ketogenic and paleo versus vegetarian versus maybe switching. Okay, so I wanted to point that out. That's a big point out there because I see a lot of people just yelling out science, even though I ask them what science, and they'll usually come back, oh, well, most scientists agree. That's that's not how scientific conversations usually go. The next insight, always ask why. So that plant was wilted, okay? So what we're talking about is non-emergency cases. I'm referring to a lot of the chronic illness. People out there on 10 medications, people out there dealing with autoimmune issues, blood sugar, obesity, diabetes, cancer, these types of things, which inherently are being medically managed, but are not considered like emergency, life-threatening for that day, okay? So when you ask why, it's really going to help us start uncovering, well, what might be missing that the plant needs, aka we need. All right. So last but not least, the most important insight is this: who really does the healing? Once you gave all the plant everything it needed, water, sunlight, soil, cleaned it out, got all the bugs away. Once you gave the plant what it needs, and then it springs back to life, and the flowers and the plant pops up and looks vibrant and looks healthy, who really did that healing? It wasn't me, right? The plant doctor. It wasn't necessarily the things I individually gave it. No. It's the life force in that plant. It's the very life of that plant. And how do we know this? Well, you can give all these wonderful things to a dead plant and it's going to do nothing. You give all these things to a living plant, even though it's sick and wilted, it will spring back to life. And it did that with no doctors. It did that with no research. It did that with no science. It did that with no human understanding. It simply gave the plant what it needed, and the plant life healed the plant. Okay, so that's the takeaway. Sometimes when I'm working with clients and I say, we got to watch out and change this with your diet. Why don't we adapt this with your habits, lifestyle, and exercise? Why don't we bring this in because you're a little nutrient deficient? Blah, 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 blah. And then ultimately, sometimes I have patients come back and say, but how does that heal X? How does that heal my body? How does that heal my adrenals? How does that heal my hormones? Guess what? When you take away what is hurting the body and then you give what the body needs, the answer to that question is your life, your body, whatever it is that's flowing and giving you life, controls and coordinates that healing process. Without any doctors, without any manual intervention, without you thinking about it. Okay? So I put that out there because in our culture, we often put way too much weight into the doctors, into the research, and we don't give enough respect to our own bodies. And I'm saying that because we don't even look into asking what our body needs. We go straight to what does the research tell us the med that we need to be on is. Okay? Time and place, that might be the answer during an emergency or a crisis. But hopefully after today's video, you realize that may not be the best strategy, and it may actually be a hurtful strategy if you don't understand some of the things that we went through here. All right, you guys. So knowing all that, getting those insights, if you know of anybody else that needs to hear this message, please share it with them. Friends, family, you name it. I'm excited to hop on here and create more information for functional medicine, why so many people need it in today's culture, and why it's different than what they're currently doing with their medication approach. So knowing all of this, I want to point out the next logical question you should be asking yourself is, okay, now that I get the ideas, the lessons from the plant analogy, what is the pillars of human health, right? So on a future video, I'm looking forward to breaking down the pillars that I've outlined for positive human health, and I'll look forward to share that. So today, if any questions came up, if something wasn't clear, I'd love to hear from you. I love feedback as it allows me to communicate better. So hit the subscribe and leave any questions or comments down below. I'd love to see you follow along here. So take care, you guys. Again, my name is Dr. Mike Lim, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye now.